Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dr. Andy Schumann. I have the privilege of helping organize and run our Bioethics Grand Round series. And today we welcome you to our virtual Bioethics Grand Rounds and invite a number of speakers who will be sharing really a huge amount of effort and work with us. Members of the Anti-Racism Oversight Committee have come together to address critically important issues related to management of really some of the most timely issues that we're dealing with that are certainly not new, but have been highlighted in ways that have required us to address them more proactively than we have in the past, both as an institution as well as a society. With that said, it is my privilege and pleasure to turn the floor over to the co-chair of the Anti-Racism Oversight Committee, Ms. Phyllis Blackman. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Schumann, and it is a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I am joined today by my co-chair, Dr. David Miller, as well as the team from the Office for Health Equity and Inclusion, our DEI team. And together, we're going to share with you the work that we have been working on for the last 6 months, and then for many years for our diversity, equity, and inclusion work. So we begin each of our meetings with our anti-racism statement. And that statement reads, Michigan medicine unequivocally recognizes racism as a public health issue, and we should be standing out as leaders against inequality. We are committed to creating fundamental change that leads to a culture of anti-racism and a medical school and health system that are leaders in equity, justice, and inclusiveness for people of all colors. So we begin each of our meetings with the statement as we are committed to the work in which we are doing. The Michigan Medicine Anti-Racism operational structure is as follows. We are sponsored by our executive team, Dr. Marshall Runge, Dr. Brian Zink, and Mr. Tony Denton. They help to provide vision and overall strategic direction for to eliminate our racism and eliminate racism and inequalities. They also help us in securing the resources and helping to remove our barriers. We also have another level of sponsorship, which are our leadership sponsors, and that would be Dr. David Brown, Dr. Steve Kunkel, Sonia Jacobs, and Dee Hunt. They too help to provide oversight and strategic directions that they actually see the whole picture and help to provide some direction in which we will need to go and to support our needs and to help to manage the risk as we do this work. They also champion the strategic direction throughout the organization and help to secure resources and to remove the barriers that we may face. The Michigan Medicine Anti-Racism Oversight Committee, again, is chaired by myself as well as Dr. David Miller. And we have a project management support by Ali Von Douglas, and she provides exceptional program management for us, as this is a heavy load, and she keeps us organized as we move forward. Our committee members are multiple committee members, but we were very inclusive in the selection of these committee members and making sure that we were inclusive of all areas of Michigan medicine. In some way or another, we see that there are a lot of resources here and a lot of information. So each time we do receive an area that may or may not have been represented, but in some way will be included in the work that is being done, because we want to hear the voices of all of our Michigan medicine community. And with that, we'll tell you a little bit more about our priorities as we move through the work, but there is a lot of work that is being done, and it is our pleasure to share that with you. We receive a lot of information and support from our advisory support group and our resource groups. You may or may not have heard of the resource groups that exist at Michigan Medicine. You can hear about those on the OHE website or through our headlines that will tell you about the different resource groups. And we encourage you to participate in those resource groups, because that's the information that helps to feed the work that we do in the Anti-Racism Oversight Committee. So just to give you a little history, the Anti-Racism Oversight Committee was established in response to the discrimination, the racial discrimination and social unrest that was taking place during June. And this was after the murder of George Floyd. And we did a survey for the Michigan medicine community, and we also took into consideration and were informed by the information that came from the White Coats for Black Lives, and this Anti-Racism Oversight Committee was established. Again, we represent the co-chairs of the committee, and then this committee is comprised of leadership, faculty, staff, nursing, and learners, with the charge to implement sustainable measures that will address anti-racism priorities. This charge was given to us by Dr. Runge at a June town hall, and our charge was to identify the practices that contribute to racism and discrimination and recommend the changes in Michigan medicine if needed and where needed, to identify an approach that achieves an anti-racist culture and utilizes the dashboard to track our progress and the outcomes of the work that we are doing. We have a very interactive dashboard that is available to our DEI leads, and you'll hear more about that from Clarissa and Michael, but we do have resources in place to help us to measure the work that we are doing. And from that, we will develop and recommend a plan and contributions we can and must make to eliminate racism and inequities that may exist at Michigan Medicine today. I can tell you that the group of people are truly engaged in the work that we have been charged to do. Our anti-racism subcommittee, again, was launched in June of 2020, and it was launched based on the responses from the survey participants. And from this survey, we were able to garner 6 subcommittees. And these subcommittees are very involved. We have co-chairs for each one of the committees, and we have representation from all of the groups that I mentioned in an earlier slide. Those subcommittees are Speak Up, Show Solidarity, Opportunities for Conversations, Education and Clinical Practice, Diversify the Workforce, Community Work, Advocacy, and Professional Development. And once again, these committees have been active since June, and they have come up with an action plan. And what we will do today, Dr. Miller and I will share with you a brief overview of what some of these objectives and deliverables that they have put in place. So right now, I want to give Dr. Miller an opportunity to speak and engage us, and then we will go back and give you a little bit of an overview of each of the subcommittees. So I welcome you, Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Phyllis. I also want to start by thanking Dr. Schuman for the opportunity to participate in the Bioethics Grand Round. And I want to thank Phyllis for truly exemplary leadership of the Anti-Racism Oversight Committee. And as Phyllis has described, the work of the committee has occurred at a truly accelerated pace. From mid to late summer through November, each of the 6 subcommittees developed an action plan, and we will share some of those details with you today. But the pace of the work and the level of creativity and collaboration was truly remarkable. And I think one of our goals was to recognize the significant work that was already being done in many areas of the organization, that we wanted to partner with and to connect and accelerate this work. So while much of the work from the subcommittees are new objectives and new deliverables, at the same time, a lot of the work reflects an effort to accelerate tremendous work already being done by partners across the organization. And so we looked very purposely for each of the subcommittees, both to identify partners that were already doing work in this area and to bring this work together. And at the same time, as we'll talk about, we are also looking forward to identifying operational partners who will be able to help us implement the recommendations in a way that the objectives and deliverables from the subcommittee will be part of how we do our everyday work. And that will be the approach, the initial action plan, the transition to implementation, and ultimately to how we do our work every day here at Michigan Medicine that represents the goals of the Anti-Racism Oversight Subcommittee. And Phyllis and I will share some details from each of the subcommittees. It is an extraordinary amount of work, and we will touch on many, but not all of the details. And I want to personally thank all of the members of the Anti-Racism Oversight Committee, our subcommittee leaders, our leadership team, for truly an extraordinary amount of work in a short amount of time that leads us to this point where we will be able to share details and look ahead towards starting to implement some of the recommendations over the next 6 months. So thank you again, and I will transition back to Phyllis, who I believe will start by sharing details from our Speak Up and Show Solidarity subcommittee.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. So again, Speak Up and Show Solidarity. Again, each one of the committees has 2 co-chairs and several members to represent the committee. Their overall goal of this particular subcommittee is to foster an inclusive culture of anti-racism by providing Michigan Medicine with an escalation framework, education, and tools so we feel safe when speaking up and showing solidarity against bias and discrimination. One of the objectives of this subcommittee is to leverage and create synergies with other safety quality initiatives that encourage transparent and effective communications across all levels of the organization. So a couple of the deliverables that they have for this particular objective is for the leadership, a leadership statement acknowledging previous barriers to committing to creating a safe space for speaking up, and to commitment from leadership to ensure that reporting retaliation will not be tolerated. So they are continuing to work on this particular objective and making sure that they have identified their operational partners that will help them to be successful in that. And I want to add that there was another deliverable for this, which I think is really important, to encourage speaking up in universal and leadership skills training. So this is training that high reliability training that has been going on throughout the institution. And this is an opportunity to incorporate speaking up and showing solidarity in that particular training. And the second objective that they have is to encourage a culture of reporting by bringing awareness to reporting mechanism, ensuring safety when reporting, and providing education on how to escalate concerns. And one of the deliverables for this objective is to provide an inventory of reporting mechanism and resources in an effort to understand the process of reporting and escalation pathways for employees. They will also implement a plan to add an easy to find, recognizable misconduct reporting website button or link to departmental homepages. And so this can be a communication broadly. So we want to make sure that the ease of reporting can be found on each of the department websites. Another objective they have is to accelerate the anti-racism education, providing the tools, resources, and opportunities to develop skills to speaking up. And this is where we have our operational partners that are already doing this work, but bringing this to the forefront so that everyone knows that this work already exists. So they will have a collection of training resources to help to support employees by speaking up, and to ensure accessibility for employee groups who have less flexibility and opportunity to engage in education by recommending a policy to allot protected time for employees for professional development. and training. So this is something that we have noticed that it cuts across all of the subcommittees, is the opportunity for training and education. And another objective is to collect resources, tools, strategies, and statements from the safety reporting and training subgroups to create a comprehensive anti-racism speak up and show solidarity toolkit. And again, there are many, many operational partners that can help them to deliver on this particular objective, and to be able to communicate this information out so it is broadly and widely known across Michigan medicine. So again, these are just a few of the objectives that this particular subcommittee has, and we do see that this is attainable. And as long as we continue to reach out to our operational partners, this can be sustainable within Michigan medicine as we continue on. So I'll move on to the next subcommittee, and that is opportunities for conversations. Again, this particular subcommittee has 2 co-chairs and representation from many disciplines across Michigan medicine. And the overall goal of this subcommittee is to create sustainable opportunities for formal and informal conversations throughout Michigan medicine, addressing racism in a psychologically safe environment. One of the objectives of this subcommittee too is to expand the Becoming series throughout Michigan medicine. This is a series that is already in existence in MICHAR, and it has been met with great success, and see that there would be great success in rolling it out to Michigan medicine in its entirety, and providing the materials to all Michigan medicine departments so that they are able to implement this in their departments to be able to have conversations. Second objective that they have is to expand communication between Michigan medicine community and DPS. One of the deliverables they have is to do a DPS public safety video with emphasis on the importance of creating an inclusive community across Michigan medicine, and also a process for incident reporting. So again, there is strong partnership between many of the existing resources in Michigan medicine, and we see this as being a group that will work collectively together and be more engaged with the Michigan medicine community. Also, to provide materials for leaders to create space for conversations. So one of the deliverables is to provide training materials for local leaders and wellness advocates to create psychologically safe spaces with high reliability. And again, the operational partners are already doing this work, and how do we broadly communicate this across Michigan medicine? The other objective is to explore the implementation of restorative justice practices at Michigan medicine. Again, these are resources that exist. How do we share this across the board? And they're looking to provide some targeted speaker series to integrate the basic steps of restorative justice, as well as informational material describing what restorative justice is to the Michigan medicine community. And so they're looking to help provide the written material, the hard copy of the materials that people would have access to. And so seeing the success of this is going to come right from the operational partners as we move forward. So now I'll turn this over to Dr. Miller, that he will give us, no, I have one more that I want to share. I'll share with you, and that is the community work group. This is a very large group, and again, this group is large, and they have 3 co-chairs and representatives from each of the areas with the students and faculty, and there's a lot of work that is taking place in this with this subcommittee. One of the overall goals of this subcommittee is to better understand and address overall health inequities and access to Michigan medicine and the surrounding communities. to ensure that our clinics serving minority and struggling patients receive the same level of resources and support as others, to ensure equal access to care in our health system, and take a leadership role in addressing health disparities within our state. There is a lot of work that is taking place in our community, and a lot of work is needed in our community because our communities are what helps us to grow, and we want to make sure that those communities are healthy communities. One of the objectives that they have is to understand the full range of initiatives that are ongoing with respect to health equity and community engagement. There are many, many operational partners that will help with this particular objective. And one is to provide a comprehensive list of known Michigan Medicine institution-wide programs that engage community and address health equity. And to develop a toolkit for developing new health equity community engagements, programs that align with an existing community priorities, the social determinants of health, and to improve health equity. They want to increase meaningful and visible community outreach engagements. And one is to share a kickoff meeting to share information 2 ways, the goals of Michigan Medicine and areas of need in the community. And once again, this will engage many of the leadership of Michigan Medicine, as well as other areas within Michigan Medicine. We want to identify new partnerships to work with and identifying gaps in outreach activities and opportunities for establishing new events. A second objective that they have is to develop a toolkit for service lines to identify underserved populations and address barriers to access. Once again, their community partners will help to assure that we move forward with this. And this is to identify at least 2 areas to partner with within the FY21. And those 2 areas were lung transplant and primary care. And then to identify additional partners in FY22, and then plan for a toolkit development and a pilot for this work. Another objective is to become members of the Health Anchor Network, which you will hear more about later on, because we are members of the Health Anchor Network, and we will be able to communicate broadly as to what that means. What is a Health Anchor Network, and more to come as to what that really means and how we can take advantage of this broad membership here. And then to contribute to local community resilience, to revitalize the Ypsilanti Health Center so that the population living in the zip codes of 48197 and 48198 are the healthiest communities in the state of Michigan. This is a huge undertaking, but it is on our list of priorities to move forward with. We will have to look and see how we do this and be able to be comprehensive in the work in which we're doing. This is not something that will happen overnight, but it has been identified as an area to look at. So, and then we would do that by looking at a needs assessment for the Ypsilanti Health Center and find out the gaps in care. This is one of our future initiatives, but we will continue to look at this and help to remove the barriers and sustain our the revitalization of the Ypsilanti Health Center. So I will turn this over to Dr. Miller now, and he can add to some of the subcommittees if so needed, as well as to provide information on the next 3 subcommittees.
Great, thank you, Phyllis. I'll start by sharing details of the work of the Education and Clinical Practice Subcommittee. This committee also had 2 co-chairs and a very diverse membership across undergraduate medical education, graduate medical education, continuing medical education, and across Michigan Medicine. And the overall goal for this subcommittee was that learners and educators in undergraduate medical education, graduate medical education, continuing medical education, and graduate studies across Michigan Medicine and the medical school should be competent and have access to curricula and best practices developed with expertise in intersectional framework and health justice. There were 5 specific objectives, and I'll share each of the objectives and several examples of specific deliverables. The first objective is to design the undergraduate, graduate, and continuing medical education and staff curricula using intersectional framework and critical race theory in partnership with health justice education professionals. One of the deliverables for this objective is to recruit a critical race theory and health justice education expert to develop scholarship, update medical school curriculum, and residency and educator training. A second objective is to develop medical school admission practices and residency interview practices of asking applicants about health disparities and through confronting bias scenarios. One of the deliverables for this objective is to implement values into directed questions for interviews and as cultural competency rating for the intake process for medical students. A third objective for the Education and Clinical Practice Subcommittee is the recruitment and retention of diverse students and residents with the goal of having these populations more accurately reflect the population of the state of Michigan. An initial deliverable related to this objective is the development of an assessment to determine why diverse medical students, graduate students, and residents might not choose University of Michigan. A fourth objective is to end race-based clinical measurement practices to provide more equitable counseling or treatment to patients of all races, with the specific deliverable being the discontinuation of 5 of 12 race-based portion or entire race-based clinical measurement algorithms or clinical measurement calculators. The final objective for the Education and Clinical Practice Subcommittee is to create incentives and opportunities for medical students and residents to participate in attractive primary care experiences. One example of a deliverable associated with this objective is to determine and identify additional opportunities for medical students to gain clinical experience in federally qualified health centers and in population health. Truly an extraordinary amount of work and collaboration by the Education and Clinical Practice Subcommittee. The fifth subcommittee is our Advocacy and Professional Development Subcommittee. The overall goal for this subcommittee is to integrate anti-racism values into our everyday work as a sustainable element of our medical community and culture, and direct the inclusion of dedicated time and resources to faculty, staff, and learners for leadership, professional development, and advocacy. The Advocacy and Professional Development Subcommittee had 3 objectives. The first identified objective is recommending specific skills and behaviors for professional development of all faculty, staff, and learners. An example of a deliverable for this objective is to identify and establish a web page that details stories and content modeling behaviors that are showing values in action with demonstrated commitment from leaders and other colleagues across the organization. The second objective for the Advocacy and Professional Development Subcommittee is the creation of learning paths and plans that intentionally promote work behavior that is unbiased in nature and advances innovative approaches in practice. One of the deliverables is the development of a 1-page themed curriculum guide that can be linked with established infrastructures for sharing information across the organization, including, for instance, some of our work with becoming a high reliability organization. The third objective for the Advocacy and Professional Development Subcommittee is to provide consulting and guidance to the other subcommittees with training objectives to ensure alignment with existing resources. And this was an important part of the process as we tried to link work already occurring in the organization across all of the different subcommittees. And the Advocacy and Professional Development Committee did an extraordinary job of connecting activities, best practices, and resources from across the organization with the work of each of the different subcommittees. The sixth subcommittee is our Diversify the Workforce Subcommittee, again with broad representation from across Michigan medicine. The overall goal of the Diversify the Workforce Subcommittee is to identify critical factors in Michigan medicine's demographic composition, increase our underrepresented minorities workforce, and recommend targeted short and long-term action plans for implementation. The first objective for this subcommittee is to develop a system for monitoring and using the diversity data of Michigan medicine leaders through the employment life cycle. An example of a deliverable associated with this objective is to develop a process for human resources in the Office for Health Equity and Inclusion to provide support for intentional recruitment strategies to leaders for leadership positions. A second objective for this subcommittee is to review historical demographics of promotions and associated practices, to recommend procedures consistent with industry best practices for increasing diversity, and review Michigan medicine hiring procedures and policies, assessing impact and aligning with best practices in order to increase diversity. An example of a specific deliverable associated with this objective is to develop hiring practice guidelines and to collect demographic data about applicant pools. The third objective for the Diversify the Workforce Subcommittee was to identify internal resources and recommend processes for increasing accessibility to career support services or positions across Michigan medicine. One of the deliverables associated with this objective is to expand mentoring options for faculty and staff, to look at options of expanding micro and mini mentoring program to faculty and staff and use existing systems available to match mentors and mentees. Fourth objective for the Diversify the Workforce Subcommittee was to identify and recommend pipeline programs that target diverse populations linked to future workforce needs at Michigan Medicine. Among several deliverables for this objective includes the exploration of institution-wide expectations on the diversity of the short-term incentive program. In addition, another deliverable is the training of leaders and hiring managers to identify diversity concerns within an existing team. So over the last 15 to 20 minutes, Phyllis and I have shared an extraordinary amount of work from each of our 6 subcommittees, specific objectives linked with identified deliverables, clarity on potential operational partners, and now a transition over the next 6 months toward implementation of as many of the deliverables as possible in the near term and over the longer term. So in thinking about next steps, we're now at a point where our leadership sponsors and Maya Kabersi from the Office of the Vice President and General Counsel have received final action plans for review. Next week, we will meet with the Michigan leadership team to review the final action plans, as well as, importantly, resource requests to ensure the successful implementation of as many of the specific deliverables developed by the subcommittees as possible. At the same time, we are asking for leadership support with a broad communication plan. That includes sharing the details of the work done by the Anti-Racism Oversight Committee, but also a commitment to listening, a commitment to meeting with members of our community from across the organization and listening to concerns, aspirations, and recommendations for how we can continue our work toward our aspirations of becoming an anti-racist organization. As I mentioned, resource allocation timelines will be discussed during our meeting with the Michigan leadership team. Subsequently, our action plans will be presented to our executive and leadership sponsors in early 2021. Moving forward from there, we anticipate spending approximately 6 months identifying and finalizing partnerships with operational teams across the organization to begin the implementation process for many of our deliverables. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Phyllis for any closing comments, and thank you again for the opportunity to share our work, and thank you sincerely to all of the members of the Anti-Racism Oversight Committee and to all of our colleagues who've been contributing to this work across Michigan medicine.
Thank you, Dr. Miller, and thank you for your attention as we have shared the work of our committee. Right now, I'm going to turn this over to Clarissa Love and Michael Harrington from the Office for Health Equity and Inclusion to show how, from an educational standpoint, how this work their work ties directly into the work of the Anti-Racism Oversight Committee. As I mentioned throughout the presentation, that we identified operational partners, and the OHE DEI team are truly the operational partners that will help to keep this work moving. So I'll turn it over to both of you.
Thank you so much. And we are So excited to be with you all today. I am going to introduce myself. I am Clarissa Love. I am the DEI consultant in the Office for Health, Equity, Inclusion, and in my role, I support DEI strategy. And joining me today is...
Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Harrington. I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Learning Lead for the Office for Health, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm responsible for our learning curriculum. I do unit consultations and coaching with leaders and managers, and I also help with some incident management.
We thought it would be important to do a little bit of a backstep and tell you a little bit about our office. As we are part of, Phyllis is our courageous director and leader. I think Michael's going to tell you a little bit about our vision and our mission within OHE.
So our vision in OHE is to create a world where every person feels values and can thrive. And our mission is to honor the well-being and the individual dignity of all who work, learn at Michigan Medicine, to champion diversity and inclusion of our patients and diversify the next generation of nurses, health professionals, and physicians. The staff and faculty at OHE are really we're a resource for people to help them on their journey with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and make Michigan Medicine a better place. And like we said, where person can feel like they are valued and can thrive.
And today it's me and Michael speaking to you, but we wanted to acknowledge that there are many folks that are a part of our team that really help keep us moving. And we are working remotely currently, so this is a Zoom picture of our team recently at a team building activity. We wanted to share a little bit about what guides our work. So there are 3 strategic priorities that guide our overarching diversity, equity, and inclusion work here at Michigan Medicine. And these were passed down to us from Central Campus under the direction of President Schussel. The first strategy is to create an equitable and inclusive campus climate. The second one is to recruit, retain, and develop a diverse community. And the last one is to support innovative and inclusive scholarship and teaching. I hope you can see from those 3 priorities that anti-racism impacts every single one of them. And so this work is not competing, but will work and be an enhancement to the work that we've been doing thus far. Michael's going to share a little bit about our educational pathway, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the programming we offer.
This is our DEI learning model, and we love this image of a roadway. And I wish the arrow at the bottom would continue off the screen because it's a continuous journey. It never ends. We have the mission on here, but also we can't do this work without our collaborative partners. And this is just a list of a few of them. All of Michigan Medicine, our units, our leads, our drivers, leadership, and different offices like Human Resources and the Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion on campus. But what's central to our work in the middle is metrics and measurement. And this informs our current and our future practices. And this also includes our Michigan Medicine dashboard, which we're happy, and our Net Promoter Score is part of that, which we're happy to provide you with more information at a later time. Love the continuous nature of the circle: awareness, practice, and modeling. And that's really the framework in which we design our learning and engagement activities. And in terms of the roadway, starting with awareness, we go through practice and then eventually from awareness to behavior, then to modeling.
Yeah, I think it's so key, Michael, that you mentioned the arrow going off the page, because what we know is that this is a continuous process, and that although you may become comfortable and competent in one area, that there's this need to continually evolve and grow.
And I want to make one more point.
I love how you have really...
Sorry about that. So I wanted to make one more point about this too. There's a fluidity to what we do, because even look what's happened the last 8 months, that we're always adapting and changing. So it's not only metrics and measurement that inform future content, it's also what's going on in Michigan Medicine and the world. And so there's a fluidity to what we do that it's always changing. So I wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, so much for talking about, we really do try to lean into being relevant in our work. There are if you want to talk for a moment about the 4 core things that we do within the educational area.
Yeah, it's not just class design, formal and informal. We also design learning activities for groups and that can be self-directed. One of the things that the last 8 months have taught us is the importance of online classes, their portability and flexibility, how important it is to have those kinds of offerings. But we also do consultations, like I said before, in terms of units' learning needs. And again, the importance of sustaining this work, it's the classes are just a small part. It's the idea of sustaining it as ongoing engagement and learning activities. And we talk often about the importance of conversation as activities that, in terms of learning from one another.
Yeah, thanks so much for mentioning that, Michael. And I know we have a large emphasis on when you're designing those education plans on figuring out where we're actually headed and not just offering a random class. We really like to be intentional with our education that we provide. So thank you so much. I'm going to talk a little bit for a moment about the other areas. So we do education, but our DEI team is broader than that. We also do engagement and implementation. We have a couple of core areas, and Phyllis actually mentioned a couple of these earlier, but I'll just enhance or emphasize those as I go along. We have community conversations, which are opportunities every week for people to connect around relevant topics. We cover things from the George Floyd murder to balancing parenting to dealing with polarity during the election. It's really a wide sweeping option, and those are facilitated by the members of our DEI team, and we often bring in external experts to help us have more robust conversation. We also occasionally do town halls. We specifically did one on anti-racism, which really helped to inform and engage the work of the Anti-Racism Oversight Committee. We have DEI leads that are placed locally across departments. Their role is to be local culture ambassadors. As we mentioned earlier, we cannot do this work in isolation, and so we need people to support and engage with us. We also help with aligning strategy to what the resources that we have available across the organization and making sure that people are helping to design a culture where everyone can live into our vision of having a Michigan medicine where people feel valued and they can belong. In addition, we do consultations around strategy, and we also have resource groups. The resource groups are a variety, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment. But I want to engage with Michael for a second for us to talk about our work with supporting leaders. I think that this is a critical piece of the work that we do and maybe may not be known to everyone. We do consultations, as we mentioned, both for education and for strategy, but we also do consultations specifically with leaders that may be trying to support and guide the culture of their unit or department. Michael, do you want to talk a moment about some of the work we do in terms of critical incident support for our leaders?
Well, and some of the work we do is around restorative justice and involving the whole community in that is impacted by an incident. Often it's not the 1 or 2 people that are involved. There's a ripple effect on the entire community. And the idea is about how can we heal and move forward together. So we'll work with leadership in facilitating dialogue and conversation to help the group to not only move forward, but to learn from the incident.
We also provide education specifically to leaders through our engagement with the Foundations of Leadership program in partnership with organizational learning. We help leaders with strategy in terms of DE&I, but we actually believe that DE&I should be woven in all of the work that we do, similarly to how anti-racism should be, and as a part of that. And so because of that, we help them to think about how they can enhance their strategies. We do coaching, individual coaching for leaders that may have a variety of comfort levels with talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion topics. We just want someone to be a sounding board that has more experience with an understanding of diversity and inclusion topics. And lastly, we provide community engagement. We help leaders to engage their community because one of the things that we know that is critical to this work is to amplify the voices that are represented across the organization. We have done a lot of ways work to get in community engagement. When we initially built our strategic plan, we engaged over 5,000 voices in its creation.
And can you go back one, Clarissa? Go back to that, because I liked what you said before about how these all overlap. So these are definitely not mutually exclusive. So we might do coaching around how a leader can engage their community and get them more comfortable with conversation and the importance of role modeling and the idea of, you know, a leader being able to hold the space and have that conversation in a way that is genuine and that can resonate with their group.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. We thought we'd share like a couple of examples, just two, of how this actually shows up in things that you may have seen across the organization. One way is we came together collectively following Breonna Taylor and George Floyd's murder to really call out and call in our community to really come together in solidarity. And so we held a Juneteenth tribute across the Michigan Medicine campus that was social distanced over the summer. We also, as Phyllis mentioned earlier, want and need your voices. And so one way that our office does that is we have resource groups around a variety of topics. We ask you to please become engaged and join a resource group that meets or fills and resonates with you. If you don't see one that resonates with you, we encourage you to email medicinedei@umich.edu, because perhaps there's a new group that we need to start. These groups are self-driven and self-directed by community members across Michigan Medicine that help us facilitate and provide a safe space for people to have community. One of the things that we know that really matters, and I know Michael can talk a minute about this, is the need for us to have belonging in the work environment.
Well, and the idea about informing leadership and making recommendations from these groups is a very important part of the process. And that all goes back to the beginning when we talked about our vision about people feeling like that they belong before they can thrive. And the idea, part of that belonging is having a voice. And that's what these resources groups are about.
Another way that our office engages broadly is that we have the Michigan Medicine Health Disparities Community Action Network, which was started by our leader, Dr. David Brown. And this group works to involve and start to highlight disparities that we see happening across the community. And they bring together meaningful topics on a quarterly basis to really talk about health disparities and talk about how it's not just a group that talks about them existing, but the goal specifically is to really think about actions can be taken. You may ask, how do you get involved? And so we want to share with you a couple of resources of how you can get involved in our office. We are going to take you to our office website because that's the first place that we want you to go. Our office website is ohei.med.umich.edu. And if you scroll down, one of the things you can click on, if you click on anti-racism support and tools, there are a variety of tools that we recommend and have curated based on what we based on our experience and what we have seen to be effective. One of the things that we do have is a conversation tool. I'm not going to go to that right now for the sake of time, but there is a tool that they're designed to allow you to have a meaningful conversation within your unit. So if you scroll down, you'll see that there's all sorts of tools and resources. We also want to point out that sometimes you want to think about something specific. And if you click on, for instance, engaging in anti-racism work and practicing solidarity, you will find that there are resources right there that will take you to. And thinking about, one is like affirming Black lives without infusing trauma. How do you do that? Those are questions that you may have. And this is a really great resource for you to get engaged and to learn and to build your educational awareness. But I'm going to take a moment and turn it over to Michael, and he's going to talk a little bit about our online educational offering that will be coming to your fingertips.
Well, in early January, we'll be launching our new website and also our DEI certificate program. And we're happy to offer this. It's focused around some core curriculum that's really the core offerings that are fundamental to Michigan medicine. One is bias in medicine, one is cultural humility, one is social determinants of health, and the other is bystander intervention. And once somebody completes these core offerings, there is also some elective offerings because we wanted to give people some choice points. And one of the major features of this program is people can be the architects of their own learning. So after taking the core classes, they have choice points around awareness and practice and modeling. And then once they've in some of the curriculum that's offered is people can attend facilitator led, but a lot of the core classes are online offerings. And I mentioned the flexibility and portability of that for folks. And then when you've completed the requirements of the certificate program, we'll be doing a survey in Qualtrics so we can assess what people have learned and what kind of impact completing the programs had. And then folks will complete and get a certificate.
We're so glad that Phyllis invited us to spend time with her and Dr. Miller to talk about anti-racism. What we hope our message is that diversity, equity, and inclusion is very broad. It encompasses disability and LGBTQ and culture and climate, but anti-racism is at the core and the heart of that. I call it the pulse of the work that we do. And so we're so excited to see what comes forward from the Anti-Racism Oversight Committee. I'm going to turn it back to Phyllis and Dr. Miller for closing remarks.
Thank you, Clarissa and Michael, for sharing the work that you do on a daily basis. Your work is invaluable, and I know each and every day you have the opportunity to learn something new and then create curriculum to help to support that and educate that others. So for that, I am truly grateful for the work of you and Michael and Stacy and LaTanya. And we have a small team, but yet mighty in the work in which you do. So for that, I am grateful. So I'll let allow Dr. Miller to have a few closing remarks, and then we'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Schumann.
Thank you. I also want to thank Clarissa, Michael, and the entire team for the extraordinary work and partnership, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share our work today. And Dr. Schumann, thank you very much, and we'll turn it over to you for any closing remarks.
It's truly a pleasure to be able to bring the work that you've done to a broad audience. And from my standpoint, really the message here is that the work of this group is pervasive across our campus and across our society. This is not an issue for selective groups of people, but rather an issue for our entire community. This is not about ethics per se or morals per se. It's about the way we interact with each other on a daily basis, and needs to be elevated and considered really with every component of what we're doing. We're living in an uncertain world full of divisiveness and challenges that are unique to our times, but that is no excuse for us not to recognize the importance of mutual respect and diversity, and really all of the work that your group is promoting both throughout our institution and our community. So with that, I will thank you again. This is an ongoing conversation rather than a one-time event. So we very much look forward to working together and collaborating in the future. Stay well, stay safe, and thank you for the incredibly important work that you're all doing.
Thank you.